Today is December 6, 2013. I'm interviewing Eddie Toledo at his home in Middletown, Connecticut. The interviewer is Nils Toledo Jr., working with Central Connecticut State University. Also present is Therese Lagana, camera operator, Mabel Toledo, the wife of Eddie Toledo, and Eddie Toledo's two daughters, Gabi and Miguela Toledo. So for the first segment, can you please start by stating your full name, date of birth, and the city and state in which you live?
Eddie Albert Toledo. What was it?
Yeah.
You gotta give me. And cut.
Okay, state your full name, date of birth, and where you live, city and state.
Date of birth. Okay, Eddie Albert Toledo, October 23rd, 1961. Born in New York City, New York.
Okay, and where do you live now?
I live in 190 Elizabeth Lane, Middletown, Connecticut.
Okay, and in which war did you serve, if any?
I was in active duty during the first Gulf War, and I also was active duty during the Grenada conflict.
Okay, and what was your branch of service?
United States Coast Guard.
And what was your highest rank?
Highest rank was E7 Chief Petty Officer.
And in what general locations did you serve?
I served in the East Coast generally. I served in New York, Virginia, Connecticut, and Puerto Rico.
Okay. And were you drafted or did you enlist?
I enlisted.
And where were you living at the time?
I was living in New York City.
And do you remember the date that you enlisted?
I enlisted in... My official enlistment date is July 7th, 1980. But I was a delayed entry program, which I believe I enlisted, I think about a month before.
Okay, and why did you join?
I went to my college. The college I was accepted was Manhattan University, Manhattan College in New York City, and I felt like I wasn't supposed to be there, and I joined the Coast Guard.
Okay, and why did you pick the service branch you joined?
Well, that was my father. My father was the one that directed me and told me to look at the Coast Guard.
Okay, and can you just tell us a little bit about your first days in service?
First day in service, when I left when I was the date that I was going to boot camp, the recruiter gave me a bus ticket and a token to go to Grand Central Station, take a bus to Cape May, New Jersey, and I was in the Coast Guard. So they picked me up and I was in boot camp. So after boot camp, I was stationed in Governor Island, New York, and which is a little different because all my friends saw me coming back like I was like a regular job, but I wasn't. I was in the service.
And how did it feel getting on that bus and just kind of going, knowing that?
I didn't know. It was me and two other guys, and I never met them. We met at the recruiting station. They gave us the token. They gave us the bus ticket. They picked the oldest guy. They said, "You're the oldest. Here you go. You're the one that runs it." We went down, took a train down to Penn Station, took a bus, and off we went. Didn't know where we was going. So.
Okay, and how can you tell us a little bit about your boot camp or your training experience?
Boot camp was it was intense, but it was very you learn a lot in a short period of time. They really cram a lot of information in a short period of time, and all the training in the military was pretty much geared like that. Short period, lot of training, a lot of information, and you had to pick it up really quick and really fast. Boot camp, the first couple of weeks was more of a learning curve as learning the ranks and how to salute and how to address an officer or enlisted person, and then after those couple of weeks of just learning, they gave you a couple of weeks after that for um, making sure you know. So they test you, and if you don't know, you be doing push-ups, you be running around, you be doing uh, jumping jacks for hours. So unless you learn your information.
And some of the media representations of boot camp are very rough and very. The one that comes to mind is Full Metal Jacket.
Okay.
Kind of boot camp in there. What,
Yeah.
what do you think about the media's representation of boot camp
Well,
and your experience?
the media is gonna try to sell. They're gonna try to sell a story, and that's what they're there for. Um, if you remember that boot camp was during the Vietnam War, which they were taking young guys, teaching them how to pretty much kill somebody, keeping their life and their company's life safe, and try to bring them back home. And there were no room in era of learning. You had to learn that information. My experience in boot camp was during peacetime, so it was intense and it was a lot of learning. But they didn't give me a gun to show me how to disassemble a firearm and put it all back together in a certain period of time because the enemy's coming. So it was intense, but not as intense as that movie.
And do you remember any of your instructors?
My company commander was B1 Bailey. I never forget him. He was a significant emotional event in my life, and they called him Tasmanian Devil, and he was a mean guy, and he was a prior Marine. He was prior service was Marine, so he came from the Marine Corps. So he gave us a run for our money.
And why was he significant?
He was the first guy that was introduced to us. When you first go in boot camp, you have a couple of days of getting your gear, learning how to stamp and mark your gears, and making sure all you have all your gear, okay? And then they introduce you to the company commander, and B1 Bailey came into the classroom, and before he said anything, he flipped tables. He started screaming at us. He told us to get outside as fast as we can, but we couldn't run. But don't run, but get out quick. And we was like, we didn't know what was going on. And we started. That's when we started doing push-ups. And he made sure he told us who was in charge, and he was in charge. So.
And why do you think he was so rough on you guys?
For us to listen. There was no other way. You can't. You learn that in the military or in anything you have certain leadership skills, and at that point he didn't want to have a conversation. It was a dialogue. He told us we had to do. That's it. After a while you learn that he lets you express some ideas, but depending on what situation you're in, that's the leadership that he has. So at that point, it was, I'm telling you what to do, and that's it.
And how was that different than your than kind of coming just kind of off the streets of New York into that kind of situation?
It was different. It was different. It was different. In New York, my father told me what to do, and I I didn't talk back at him. My mom told me what to do, and I didn't talk back to her. So part of it wasn't that hard to grasp, but another part was that the strangers telling us, screaming at us. I mean, getting in your face, pretty much spitting all over your face. You know, in New York, that's pretty much like you're gonna fight. You know, you're gonna say something back. But at that point, we knew he was in charge, and there was nothing we could say or do. So we learned to adapt.
And how did you get through boot camp? What kind of kept you going?
What kept me going? What kept me going was the I didn't want to keep on doing this. So if you get reverted, you have another week of doing the same of that week. If you get reverted again, that's another week. I didn't want to do no more weeks. I want to do my 8 weeks and get out, you know. So that's what it was.
And were there any points in time where you kind of second guessed your decision to join the army, except specifically during boot camp?
I don't think so. I never thought of. When I found out that he was a Marine Corps prior service from the Marine Corps, I said, I should have joined the Marines, you know. But this is I never had any doubt that I didn't do the right decision.
Okay. And what about kind of your relationship with your bunk mates and the people who are going to boot camp with you?
Well, that's that learning curve that you pick up in boot camp, because you're not an individual anymore. You are a unit. If somebody fails in your company, the whole company fails. So you make sure that person is helped and try to help him carry on, because if he fails, we all fail. So we don't want to fail. So we make sure that everybody is up to snuff with what we have to do, with all the tasks that we have to do. They come in and they tell us that we have to clean the barracks. We didn't care who did what. We just knew that everybody's putting their share to make sure that we all pass. It wasn't you or I, it was us. So we make sure that we pass the inspections.
And was it a supportive environment among your comrades?
Supported, yes. We had to support each other, and we had to put our differences to aside. Being born and raised in New York City, I never felt as much racial feedback as much as I felt in the military, because we came from all different parts of the country, so we all had to learn that a Puerto Rican doesn't carry a knife in their shoes all the time, you know, and I have been asked for that. So yes, it was supported, because the company commander came out and said, I don't care where you came from, we all wear blue. So we're all in this together. So there's no difference. Everybody's the same.
Okay. And what was your most significant memory from boot camp?
Graduating. When I graduated, I felt such a relief. And a couple of days before graduation, we had our orders where we're going, and I found out I was going back to New York. So that was a bonus for me.
Okay, and what's the kind of social life that you have when you're going through boot camp, if any?
There was no, social life. In boot camp, our social life in boot camp was having a couple of hours to go to the PX. That was our social life. We had no dances. We had no parties. We had nothing like that. We all talk to each other as we're doing a task or working together. You know.
Okay. And how about from your time in the service, what was the ratio of women to men like?
When I got in the Coast Guard, I believe it was a couple companies that had females, and we were one that had females, and we had I'm not sure how many, but we had like about I think 8 to 11 females in our company, which made it a challenge because we had to make sure they carry the load as much as they have to make sure we carry the load.
And were they treated differently because they were women?
No, no, I never seen anybody treated differently in that sense, female and male. We all did the same thing.
Okay. And what's besides graduation, is there anything that ever happened during boot camp that kind of stuck with you all this time? Any specific training you did or any?
Well, I screwed up one time when I was going down the staircase, and when you see a company commander, you have to yell out gangway, and you have to move to the side so the company commanders could walk up, right? So there were 5 company commanders. I saw 5 guys with these hats on coming up, and I just could not say it. Each of them took turns screaming at my face. I was standing there because I could not say it. So that moment, I was like, please kill me, because I was gonna die. But they yelled at me, and I just moved on.
And after boot camp, where did you go?
I went to Group New York, 8 towns, Ace to Navigation station.
And what were your first impressions when you arrived there?
Totally different. We didn't have nobody screaming at us. They treated us more fairly. We had our barracks. Nobody didn't come in and really inspect as they did in boot camp. So it was geared down a little bit in that sense. You got inspected in boot camp every day with your uniform. When you went out to the units, you didn't get inspected every day. You get inspected maybe once a month or once every 2 months or something like that. It wasn't as much as they did in boot camp.
And what did you do there? What was your assignment?
I was a fireman, and I was a boat engineer for 47 footers on the boats.
So what did you do on them exactly?
The Ace to Navigation, the Ace to Navigation unit used to go and take care of the buoys and structures for navigatable waters. So we used to bottom line was we used to go attach to a buoy, bring the buoy up, scrape it, paint it, put retro on it, put new numbers on it, and make sure the chain and everything, inspect the chain, inspect the weights and all that, and then put it back on station, making sure that buoy is where it's supposed to be.
And what was your experience, your overall experience there as opposed to one boot camp and where you would end up later?
It was to me, I enjoyed it a lot. We had a mission. We worked very hard, but after working hours, we all got together and we went to the club, had a couple of beers, and we had a social life. We had a social life then, but boot camp I didn't. So that's when you start learning that you bring that experience from boot camp to the unit, is that we all work towards the common goal of what that unit is. At that time was Ace to Navigation.
Okay. And where'd you go after Ace Navigation?
From Ace to navigation, I got my A school, which I became a machinery technician. So I went to school, and I got trained to become a machinery technician.
And is that a military school?
Yeah, it's military school. It was a military school. It was for 16 or 18 weeks of school, and every week was a different subject. So they had 5 days to cram information that would take a normal school maybe a semester. So it was just condensed version of the information, and every week you had to take a test to pass. If you didn't pass, then you had to take another test Monday, and if you don't pass on Monday, you get reverted, and you have to take that whole week again.
Okay. And so from there you get like a certificate or something.
You get your rate, which is what you are, and your insignia, which is a machinery technician, is a cog, a wheel, and that cog is telling everybody that I'm a machinery technician.
And what did you do with that with your machinery technician training?
Well, and as my career progressed, I went to different training and different schools, and I advanced myself in different part of that engineering. I went to hydraulic school. I went to air conditioning, refrigeration. I went to turbine school. I went to engineering petty officer school, which all builds up your training to become the next level in your career. So with that training, I came out of the Coast Guard with enough knowledge to become a licensed air conditioning refrigeration technician.
And after after your initial machinery training, the first one, where did you go from there?
Base San Juan, Puerto Rico.
Okay. And how was that decided where you go? Do you have a choice in that, or?
Yeah, they they give you they give you a sheet, and they give you list of units, and you just pick the ones that you want to go. Number 1 is the one that you really want to go. Number 2, number 3, number 4, and then in the school, depending on where you ranked, is where you get your pick. So if you do very good in school and you're in a high rank, usually you get your first choice, and then that unit is taken away, and then the next person that's the highest rank gets that, and they just pick. So they call it a dream sheet. So you're dreaming where you want to go. So you just put your eight choices, and then depending on how they pick.
Okay, and what did you do in the Puerto Rico base?
I was a boat engineer for the search and rescue unit there.
And what year was that?
That was in 1981. May of 1981 is when I went there.
Okay. And how long did you stay in the New York base?
I stayed in New York for I believe it was about 6 months. 6 months, because when you apply for the school, they put your name on the list, and as the classes are filled, they take the people's names. So if you're number 100 and they got 2 classes of 50, so you gonna go to the second class. So that's where in 6 months I got picked to go to school.
Okay.
So.
And after Puerto Rico, where did you go?
From Puerto Rico, I went to Coast Guard cutter Tampa, medium endurance cutter, hull number 902, out of Portsmouth, Virginia.
And what was your assignment there?
I was part of the engineering department in main prop, which ran the engine room.
Okay, and let's just go back to Puerto Rico. What was your first impression when you got there? compared to the New York base and your experience thus far in the military?
Puerto Rico, the first experience in Puerto Rico, I had family there, so I saw a lot of family that I didn't see. So it was a joy for that. But it was very hard because as a young kid, pretty much, I got married, and I had no car. I had no means of transportation. I had to depend on the bus, which was a big factor of where we lived in Puerto Rico. So we had to live really close to the base. And then the Coast Guard helped us out by having a program that they call lease housing, which, because my rank was very low, I was a E3, E4 in Puerto Rico. I didn't rate a house, so they had lease housing. So they got an apartment for us in an area in Puerto Rico next to the base.
And then how long were you there in Puerto Rico?
In Puerto Rico, I was there for about 2.5 years. In 81. Yeah, about 2.5 years.
Okay. And where did you go after Puerto Rico? You went to Virginia.
I went to Virginia after Qatar, Tampa.
And what were your first impressions when you got there?
I was it was again, this cutter was new, so we got a lot of training, which I enjoyed, and we flew out to Tacoma, Washington to pick up the boat, and it was a great experience. It was a great experience.
And how long were you there?
In Virginia, from the boat, I went to the MAT team, which is the shore unit that takes care of the boats or the cutters, and I was in Virginia for 4 years. Yeah, about 4 years. 3.5 years, 4 years.
Okay,
in Virginia.
And that brings us to what year now?
About 1986.
Okay, and
87, and I went back to New York, to Governor's Island, to the MAT team of a 378. So a MAT team is a maintenance augment team that helps the boat crew or the cutters with their maintenance. So when the boat, in theory, the boat pulls in, the cutter pulls in, the team goes on board and helps the ship crew to do their maintenance.
Okay. And how long were you at Governor's Island?
I was there in Governor's Island. It was like two team, MLC, Sturgeon Bay. I was in 3 units in Governor's Island. So I stayed in Governor's Island, but I went to 3 different units. I went from the MAT team, I went to MLC, LANT, which was another type of team to help cutters, but they were helping cutters throughout the whole Atlantic side, okay? And then from the MAT team, from the assist team, I went to the cutter Sturgeon Bay.
Okay, when you say cutters, what do you mean?
A cut in the Coast Guard, a cutter is 65 feet and 65 feet in length and greater. So anything 65 feet or higher is a cutter. So you got 65. I was on a 270-foot cutter, 100-foot ice breaking cutter. I was on an 82-foot cutter. I was on a 157 buoy tender, which is a cutter. So anything above 65 feet is a cutter.
And in the Coast Guard, for each of your assignments, were you on a boat?
No. Excuse me. No, I was. Group New York and team, I was in small boats. In Base San Juan, Puerto Rico, I was in small boats. Then I was in a cutter in Virginia, cutter Tampa. From the cutter Tampa, I went to the 270-foot mat team, which is just a group that's stationed on the base. Then from there, I went to a 378 mat team. From the 378 mat team, I went to the MLC assist team, which is not a cutter. And then from there, I went to the Sturgeon Bay, which is a cutter. From the Sturgeon Bay, I went to the Point Bonita, which is a cutter. From the Point Bonita, I went to the cutter Redwood, which was a cutter. And then I went to Station New London.
Okay, so after your second stint in New York,
Okay.
you went to New London, or did you go somewhere in between?
From Governor's Island, I went to Long Island. I went to a patrol boat.
Okay. And what was your impressions when you got there?
On the patrol boat, I got remarried when I went to the patrol boat, and my impression was that it was good because I was the chief of the boat, so I was in a high ranking position on that cutter, and it was good to be the boss sometimes. So, you know.
And how besides being the boss, how was that experience different than from when you were serving someone else?
Well, you're always serving. You're always gonna have somebody above you. Cause I was the chief on the boat, but I had a master chief above me. So I think when you start getting up in the high ranks, you're part of the planning stage of the unit. So you're more involved in which way the unit's gonna go and how we're gonna get there. More on hands-on on trying to do things to get the job done. I mean, when you're in low rank, you're told, okay, we need to do this. Now I'm telling them we need to do this because I know why we need to do this. So
you're a little more in the know.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And was this your first chief position?
Yes, the Point Bonita was my first chief position.
And how is that decided when you move from base to base? How do they decide where you're going to be in the next base?